Hello and welcome. My name is Joanna Kay with Screen Magazine, and today we are meeting with Robert Jury. He is the producer, writer, and director of the feature film Working Man. A powerful and timely story of Rust Belt factory workers fighting back after their plastics factory closes and they lose their jobs. The fight is led by aging career factory worker Allery Parks, portrayed by Peter Garrity, who finds himself an unlikely leader. As the story escalates, so too do the truths, pain, and loss that come with living a life. Amazing performances by Peter Garrity, Billy Brown, and Talia Shire. Bob Jury, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Good to be here.
You started as a screenwriter. You were working for the studios, and now you've jumped into directing. I want to know, what is it about this script in particular that made you want to keep it in your hands and foray into producing and directing?
Well, I think the reason why most people want to maybe direct their own work, it's because it was subject matter that was personal to me. I grew up in the near river towns and factory towns of the Midwest. So I felt like I could really clearly identify with the people that are portrayed in this film in a way that maybe only people who grow up around those folks and around those environments can, and to get an authentic look and feel of that environment. And also, if you've seen the film, it deals with the subject matter of mental health, mental illness a bit. Also, a topic that's very personal with myself and family members and people I've known. So when you have that sort of combination, I guess, to me, it felt like this was the right moment, the right time. And if I could ever direct it myself, this story, it seemed like the perfect opportunity. So just fortunate that we were able to get it done and shot prior to COVID and everything that's been going on since. But no, I'm personally really happy with the way that the movie has been received so far, and what we've been able to achieve as a crew, as a cast. It's honestly beyond expectations at this point. It's strange how the world sometimes, you have a story that might be connecting at a certain point in time, that you hadn't otherwise planned, but seems like as I've told other people before, it seems like we're a story that may be meeting the moment, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for people who saw the film before the pandemic started versus now, I feel like they're going to interpret the film in different ways. What have you seen people reaching out to you to relate to you about this film, and was that different before and now, during this pandemic?
Sure. I think, we spent a year on the film festival circuit. We were fortunate to have one, right, in 2019. The film festivals were still physical and operating. And, typically in the festival environment, I would get responses that people would be responding to one aspect or another of the film, as it would relate to their lives or their background. Now we're in a situation where we have so many people unemployed, as a result of coronavirus. They can relate directly to that issue of work and the importance of labor. But I think also now this is also a story of unity, something that a lot of people would like to hear, given our present circumstances, what's happening around the country. So, I think the narrative and the interpretation has changed based on the environment around us now.
Yeah, and with just like what you said, you have in this film a very diverse cast coming together for one cause, which is amazing. How timely your story is. There's you mentioned the authenticity that you achieved.
and it's through specific shots and your art direction and location, like the tchotchkes in the home and like the Braunschweiger for lunch and the powdered donut were just so essential to capturing the feel of the Midwest factory town. I myself am from the Midwest, and I saw so many familiar things. Can you go into detail on how you formed your vision, maybe a bit about your relationship with your DP or certain films or directors that influenced you as well to get this vision?
Sure. Well, we had as you saw, we had a terrific director of photography. Our cinematographer is a man named Piero Basso. He's a New Yorker, Italian-born, kind of splits time between working in New York or here in the States and also doing films in his native Italy. And when I saw Piero's reel before we had even met, I had a pretty good indication that he might be a great match for me and the movie in and of itself, because he, in his previous films and work, was able to capture that realness, that authenticity of a place and of a situation. And I knew that was really going to be vital for this particular story to succeed and relate to folks. And on the production side, our production designer, a woman named Sarah Sharp, Chicago, as most all of our crew was, Chicago-based. Sarah, and I remember one of the first conversations I had with her, we were talking about what the look and that feel of our main characters, the couple, main characters' house would be, and that it should feel clean but dated, right? And sort of from another time. And as you mentioned, all the knickknacks and so forth around that populate the house that so many people can relate to growing up in a certain part of the country. She said, well, my grandparents are from Kentucky. And I said, you'll get this. You got this. And she did. Her and her team, they had to dress that house that was otherwise beige, from carpet, furniture, wall, everything was beige throughout that house. And they did a really brilliant job, I thought, of bringing us into those lives and what that, again, looks and feels like. So, and as far as influences from other filmmakers and directors, I think, like a lot of folks, I love the work of Alexander Payne. I think he does, in Nebraska, for example, I think it's a film where you're immediately transported to that time, that place, and have a true sense of what it's like to be in that community amongst those people. It just feels real and it feels true. So The Straight Story by David Lynch, I think, was a movie that I thought about a lot when I was writing this script, and a number of films, but I guess more than anything, it was important to get it right visually when we were shooting, and because of the people around me that did such an amazing job, I think we achieved that for the most part.
Yep, you absolutely did. Speaking of the people around you that helped bring it to life, there were so many amazing people involved in this. I want to hear about how you formed your team, from your producing partner, Clark Peterson, to what your connection is with Rocky. You share the same editor, and of course, Talia Shire. And I watched an interview with Garrity and Shire, and they're finishing each other's sentences. And they're such a couple. And Patrice McLean in the coffee shop, amazing performance.
Yeah.
Please tell me how you formed this amazing team.
Well, I think it starts with you start with that core group of people. Clark Peterson, as you mentioned, was kind of my senior producing partner on this project. He and I met through a mutual friend who was my mentor at the Film Independent screenwriting lab. A woman named Meg LaFoe was my screenwriting mentor, a great screenwriter in her own right. She thought Clark and I would maybe hit it off, and we did. That was 10 years ago. That was a decade ago. And we tried a lot of different tacks trying to get the movie made, failed a lot. And finally, we had an angel investor swoop in who believed in the material, the film. And from there, Clark recommended a producer that he had worked with before, Lovell Holder, who I speak with Lovell still probably 2 to 3 times a day. And in addition to Lovell, MyML was rounded out our producing group. And from there, we went off to Chicago for pre-production, and we cast everybody out of Chicago except for our 3 leads. So it was, to me, it was important to be in a city because of our budget and the constraints of the budget. It was going to be really important to be in a city that had a really strong acting base, of which Chicago does. Mm-hmm. And we worked with a group called PR Casting out of Chicago that introduced us to some amazing actors. You mentioned Patrice McLean. There are a number of others in that cast that went toe-to-toe with Billy Brown and Talia Shire and Peter Garrity. And those 3 in particular, when they came in, you don't have a lot of time, you don't have a lot of money with an independent film. So we didn't have much in the way of rehearsal preparation. So we had conversations, of course, and you'd make little changes while you were shooting, but really they have to come in prepared and good to go, because we didn't have any time for pickups. We didn't have time to go back and reshoot anything. What we got on our day was what we got. Yeah. And Peter and Talia from day one, I had great confidence that they were going to be able to relay that chemistry you talk about, right? That you have to believe that they're a married couple who's known and lived with each other for 40 plus years. And that's an extremely difficult thing to master. You have to be a really skilled actor to pull something like that off. So we were very lucky to get the actors that we did, and the crew and everybody else. Sometimes it just works, right? We had 20 shooting days in total in the Chicago area, and we used every last minute of that. And you also spoke about the post-production team, the relationship between the Halseys, Richard Halsey, who edited Rocky. It was 40 plus years, I think, since he had done a movie that had Talia Shire in it, and the last movie he did was Rocky, right? He won the Oscar for editing Rocky with Talia Shire in it, and now they've been reunited professionally on our movie. We edited the film in California at Richard's home. His daughter Morgan Halsey and I worked on a daily basis, just doing the nuts and bolts of editing every day, long days. I probably overstayed my welcome more than a few times at their house. But Richard would come in and just from time to time just offer the perfect amount of sage advice when we needed it. It seems like I'd be struggling with a scene or something wasn't quite working, and Richard would sort of waltz in and ask Morgan to play it back, and he'd have a solution for us. So it was I think a great balance in our cast and crew, and even into post-production, of great experience, but also youth and energy. Lovell Holder and MyML, I mentioned earlier, they're younger producers, but far more experienced than I am, just with their own resumes and movies that they've done. So yeah, we just truly benefited from having a great team, and that's necessary if you have the sort of aggressive production schedule and post-production schedule that we had.
Aggressive is the right word for it, exactly. So, so you're shooting, you have a 20-day shoot schedule, and you're shooting in an actual working factory. And so I'm assuming, what was that?
So you've done your homework.
This film was so interesting, and there were so many things that rang so true. It felt like it was based on a true story. I felt almost like I was watching part documentary, part film, and it was. I wondered, because of your tight schedule, aggressive schedule, as you said, what changed from what you thought you were going to get and maybe your first few days on set. What were some of the changes that maybe you didn't expect that you ended up seeing in the finished product, or something that you maybe wanted to focus on in the film and then it ended up going a different way? I want to hear what changed for you during or after production that you didn't expect.
Well, I think just because of the limitation of days and what you can and can't do, you inevitably end up cutting things, little things here and there. And I lived and worked on a daily basis with Piero Basso, our cinematographer. So he and I, prior to the shoot, had gone through an extensive shot list, trying to do as much pre-planning as possible before we even got to Chicago. But then while we were there, we would shoot, and then after the day wrapped, Piero and I would get together and grab a beer and a burger or whatever, and kind of go over the next day. And we were roomies, so we had that ability, and we got along so well that it wasn't ever contentious. But it was so valuable to make good use of that time. And I do remember there was one, our last day of shooting, I had really hoped to relay this sense of the industrial history that existed in this town. And there was an old steel manufacturing facility that existed in Joliet, Illinois. It was our last day of shooting. We shot there. We had one day in Joliet, and a lot of the beautiful exteriors with the bridges and the town, that much of what you see of that factory town from the outside is shot in Joliet. And this old steel mill, it was just the remnants that the city has made into a park. And I thought I would really love to see that in some way conveyed in the film. And we shot a bit out there. A storm rolled in. There was just elements working against us. I wasn't at my best as a director that day. And once we got into the editing room, none of that stuff seemed to work.
Oh, wow.
I really wish I'd been smarter in the way that I developed the story in a way to integrate it. But when ultimately it comes down to time and what's most important. And as much as I wanted to show that industrial history and sort of these ruins that were there, there was honestly no place for it. I don't know. At some point, maybe we'll be able to see that footage for whoever wants to see it and cut but
but you did. I mean, you mentioned the storms and things weren't going the way you wanted, but you ended up capturing the lightning over the bridge and these exquisite shots that, I mean, I understand it might have messed you up, but it did end up, for what got left in the film, it was powerful. So.
And lucky too, because
was working for you too. Yeah.
Very lucky, because the weather that we had seen the day before, there was a lot of discussion that maybe we should just shoot in Chicago, some bridges there, because Joliet was looking to have serious storms roll in. And it's maybe one of the decisions that I'm most proud of making during the film, is that that we rolled the dice and went down to Joliet, and for the most part, those storms stayed in the distance for when we needed, and we got those beautiful shots. The lightning, it gives this ominous impression of things to come in the movie when it appears. And very lucky that we were there when we were, and that Piero was rolling when he was. And yeah, sometimes better to be lucky than good in cases like that.
Yeah. All right, so you've taken the plunge into directing your first feature. Any words of wisdom for anyone looking to do the same?
No, boy, I think it goes back to what you addressed earlier about having that team of people that not only are capable, intelligent, you're all kind of rowing in the same direction, but trustworthy and committed. You know, I mentioned Lovell Holder, who I speak with on a daily basis, Clark Peterson, Maya Mel. You're not going to find better people. And when these are the folks you're in the foxhole with for much longer than you really anticipate being, honestly. So I would just encourage first-time filmmakers, young filmmakers, be selective as much as possible. Sometimes you'll learn things about people along the way that maybe it's not a great fit here or there, and you make different partnerships. But if, as much as possible, be choosy in your team members, and in them, you know, listen to them, because quite often they're going to offer you better advice than you would maybe conjure up yourself. So yeah, just back to your original comments, it's believe and invest time and faith in that team.
Awesome. Very good advice. Thank you.
Of course.
So, congrats on your festival reception. Glad you got in there before the pandemic. The film was released May 5th on VOD, and the DVD release will be on June 2nd. And before we go, Screen Magazine would love to hear about one of your favorite restaurants, either in your hometown or where you shot in Chicago.
Well, let's see. I'll have to think about this.
Put you on the spot for this.
I need to be diplomatic in my hometown because there's so many that I like and frequent here. So maybe I should think about Chicago, where Lovell and my producing partners were staying. There was a place not far from where their place was, that claimed to be the original chicken and waffles. And I think I can't remember the exact name of it, but I know there's a bit of an argument in Los Angeles and Chicago over which one came first.
The chicken or the waffle?
Yeah, right. But I would have to say that place was a nice diversion when we were there in Chicago, and have to recommend it on the South Side. Yeah. So I think it's probably easy enough to find. If you just plugged in chicken and waffles, that you'll find it pretty easily. So
awesome. And food was such an integral part to your film. I thought it was only fitting that we find out what some of your favorite eats were.
Yeah, sure, of course. Yeah, I don't typically.
I had to go get some pie immediately after watching.
Sure, naturally. Yeah.
Well, your film was amazing. Thank you so much for speaking with us today, and we look forward to what else you create in the future. So,
thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Of course.
We're home for supper.
2 o'clock, same as full day. You're free to leave.
Niggas put in half a day just to collect our last check.
Look, I'm gonna be out of work the same as everybody else.
Guy knows he's not getting overtime, right?
Yeah, he knows. He's just been with the company a long time is all.
Look, just make sure that he's gone before you lock up. Last thing the company needs is some broken down geriatric getting left behind.
I have my circle today, grocery shopping. I'll see you after.
That ain't where a man like that belongs. He had a son, you know.
For many folks, the factory is the very heart of this town.
What are you doing?
I'm going to work. I'll be damned.
disappear. You're not here.
I am. I was.
Valerie, we can't have you in here. We just can't.
Why are you doing this?
It's just something I need to do.
It's a small town. It's hard to keep secrets around here. You work in that factory? They ain't gonna arrest us all, Valerie.
You did this?
Not me. They're out there because of you.
New Liberty's former workers have re-entered the plant and pledged to fulfill the outstanding orders promised to clients.
I just want to do my job.
You really started something here. This statement of yours.
I'm not making any statement, but
You are.
Thing is, a person needs a job to survive, but you need work to feel like you're worth something.